The movie begins with a sniper aiming from the top of a building, where he shot 5 random civilians whose purpose was unknown. After the incident, the police immediately came to the scene and found several pieces of evidence, namely in the form of bullet casings and coins used to pay for parking. From the coin, the investigative team found fingerprints that pointed to a former American sniper named James Barr. Without having to wait long, the police, together with a detective named Emerson, immediately arrested James Barr at his residence. It turns out they also found other evidence in the form of a bullet printer and a car which was recorded on CCTV at the scene. James was then taken to the police station for questioning. But when questioned, James did not make any defense or confession because he felt he did not carry out the shooting. But he only mentioned one name, namely Jack Reacre. Hearing this, Emerson discussed the name Jack Reacre with a district attorney named Alex to find out who Jack Reacre was. And it turns out that Jack Reacre is a former military officer who has impressive abilities in investigating several big cases. But now he lives like a ghost without having a clear identity, so it is impossible to find him. And this proves that Jack Reacre is not just anyone.
Come on, guy this hard to find? Gotta be one.
In the middle of their conversation, Jack Reacre unexpectedly came and said that he wanted to know James Barr's condition.
James Barr.
However, it turned out that James was lying in a coma in hospital because he was beaten by another inmate when he was taken to prison. Jack suspects that this seems to have been done deliberately by police officers.
Some corrections flunky thrown to the wolves.
After that came a woman named Helen who was Alex's daughter. She is a lawyer who is sympathetic to James Barr and will defend him at his trial.
Likewise. Let's go.
Helen, who considers Jack to be James' best friend, asked Jack to help uncover this case. But Jack refused because his arrival would kill James Barr.
I came here to bury him.
Helen then questioned Jack and dug up some information. Jack said that he was not James' friend, but rather the person who had arrested James for committing crimes in the military. He began to tell that James was once a great sniper. In a week he trained 2,000 shots. But when he was assigned to Iraq, James was only assigned to monitor the population through his binoculars without ever firing a shot. So when his desire to shoot was not fulfilled and his hands couldn't stand it anymore, James looked for his own target, namely shooting 4 people with his rifle. This case was then handled by Jack Reacre, who at that time served as a military police officer. But this shooting case was closed by the government on the grounds of war.
Thanks for the coffee, counselor.
Finally, Jack was willing to help Helen. But he also asked Helen to investigate the victims objectively. The next day, Helen went to the victims' families' house one by one. Meanwhile, Jack went to the crime scene to find out the position of the sniper who shot the victims. From the results of his observations and analysis, Jack discovered various irregularities. He believes that the shooter was not James Barr. Without Jack realizing there was a man watching him. However, we don't yet know what the connection is with this shooting case. Jack goes to the police station to examine the evidence that Emerson has collected. But here Emerson underestimates Jack's ability to not take notes when observing evidence. He asked for the serial number of the gun he had just held. But Jack asked again what year the coin the perpetrator used when paying for parking was made. Emerson, who didn't know, could only remain silent. And Jack casually answered,
1968.
Some time later at night, Jack went to a bar intending to rest and quench his thirst from a long day of activities. But not long after, he was suddenly approached by a sexy woman known as Sandy. Jack, who felt annoyed with the woman, immediately told her to get out of there. And he called the woman the night lady.
I'm old enough to do a lot of things.
Jimmy Reese.
Unable to accept being called a woman of the night, Sandy then called her friends who immediately challenged Jack to a match of strength outside the bar. And of course Jack, who is a former military man, met the challenge. Until a 1-on-5 fight broke out. Without any significant difficulties and even seeming normal, Jack managed to beat the 5 teenagers until they lay on the road. But unfortunately, after successfully paralyzing them, suddenly a police car arrived and immediately arrested Jack for committing violence against teenagers.
On the ground! That's a pretty impressive response time.
Who hired you?
After several hours in the holding cell, Jack was finally released by Helen, who vouched for him to the police. From there the two of them immediately went to the hotel to rest and relieve their fatigue. Then when she arrived at the hotel, Helen suddenly said that she had just finished visiting the victim's house, as instructed by Jack. This was done so that she could get more in-depth information about the victims of the shooting incident some time ago.
She told the clerk she didn't want the purchase showing up on her. Rita Coronado worked as a cleaning lady at the River Cross, a nanny, caring for the 6-year-old daughter of family friends.
This is where we finally get the fact that one of the 5 victims was a woman named Alan Archer, an owner of a large construction company which of course has quite a lot of business competitors. It is also known that before this incident she had rejected a company that intended to buy her business.
So she could keep the business she'd always hated.
Place is young out. Bars, bowling alleys, strip clubs.
The scene moves to a place where a man known as Charlie is seen, waiting for the arrival of someone with his boss named Zek. It is known that this person is an informant who will later be assigned to kill Jack so that he does not continue to interfere in this matter. And it turns out that Charlie was the real perpetrator of the shooting that occurred in the park.
Because we got a way of doing things so they stay done.
I made a mistake. I mean, you can still...
He feels incompetent in carrying out his duties, plus now his disguise is starting to be discovered by Jack Reacre. Of course Charlie and his boss, who were the people involved in the shooting, felt very threatened. Due to this, Charlie then decided to kill that person so that Jack would find it difficult to track them. Then Jack looks for the gang who ganged up on him to get clues. Where Sandy had told Jack while at the bar that she worked at a spare parts shop not far from the bar. Jack goes to the store to see Sandy to get information. When questioned, Sandy finally admitted that she was only told by her friend to take Jack out of the bar. Jack Reacre promised not to hurt her as long as Sandy would tell him her friend's home address.
I'm really sorry, mister.
When he got there, Jack immediately checked the house and suddenly initially Jack fell in the bathroom. But he managed to turn the situation around and beat them all. Jack asked where their other friend was, who apparently had been killed by Charlie previously. That evening Jack met Helen to explain the results of his investigation. As far as Jack knew, James Barr was a highly trained sniper, so it was impossible for him to shoot at random. According to his hypothesis, James would not shoot the target from the top of the building. Because at that time the direction of the sun's light was in front of him, which could disturb his vision. A sniper like James Barr will definitely shoot from a car, on a bridge with his back to the sun. Apart from that, it is impossible for a sniper to leave behind evidence such as bullet casings and weapons.
Parking meter. No camera. Escape is assured.
Jack firmly believed that James Barr was innocent because of the 5 victims. There was a specific main target, while the rest are just side targets to disguise this case.
Exactly.
And it turned out that the real main target was Alan Archer, a director of a contractor company, which is known to be competing with a company called Lavender Enterprise. Hearing this made Helen very amazed at Jack Reacre's observation and intelligence. But she also did not think that the case she was handling was a big conspiracy, which was usually carried out by higher-ranking officials.
The one shot where the killer took his time.
Next, Jack must be able to find out who did the shooting. The scene switches to Sandy, who is going to karaoke with her friends. Then she was approached by Charlie, who claimed to know her, and suddenly Sandy was finished off by Charlie by smothering her until she ran out of breath. Soon Emerson and the police found Sandy's body not far from Jack Reacre's apartment. After seeing the bruises on Sandy's face, Emerson suspects that Jack Reacre was the perpetrator.
Someone who could kill that girl with one punch.
Coincidentally, Jack Reacre, who was passing by, saw the police at the crime scene, and also Sandy, who had died. Emerson, who saw Jack Reacre, immediately pointed a gun and ordered the police to arrest him.
Out of the car!
Jack, realizing that he was accused of killing Sandy, tried to escape from Emerson and the police. While on the road, Jack saw Charlie, who was also chasing him. He decided to catch Charlie by crashing his car. But unfortunately, Charlie managed to escape at the intersection, while Jack himself is still being chased by the police and Emerson. Jack, who was not at his wits' end, tricked them by getting out of the car, then casually walked into the crowd of people on the side of the road. The next day, Jack continued his investigation. He went to a shooting range where James Barr usually went. Jack met the owner of the training center named Martin and asked who James was practicing shooting with.
Your friend got a name?
James Barr.
Martin will provide information if Jack Reacre succeeds in shooting the target with 3 bullets. Of course, Jack accepts Martin's challenge, provided he is given 1 more bullet to warm up. The test shot missed. But after that, Jack managed to shoot the target easily. The scene shifts to a place where Helen is seen reassuring her father that there are irregularities behind the James Barr case involving several large companies. Then when Helen was about to return to her room, she was suddenly approached by Emerson, who immediately asked her to withdraw from the case. And surprisingly, Emerson suddenly shocked Helen with a tool until she immediately became helpless. This is where the fact emerges that Emerson is a corrupt police officer who often collaborates with large companies to run business. Helen was then used as a hostage and taken to a mining company located in the mountains. Knowing this, Jack immediately called Charlie to give him a warning.
Listen to me, you prick. I will kill this bitch if you're not here. Well, she's gonna be if you're not here in 1 hour.
Without wasting time, Jack asked Martin for help to help him save Helen, who is currently being held hostage by the criminals. But instead of lending him a super weapon, Martin instead gave Jack a knife.
I told you how serious this was.
Yeah, I showed up, didn't I?
Meanwhile, Helen, who was chatting with Jack, immediately asked him why he had the heart to kill 5 innocent people in the park the other day. And sure enough, it turned out that Jack was a business competitor who felt hurt and disappointed in Alan Archer because she had refused to sell the company to him. And his main reason for killing the other 4 people was as a diversion and a way to accuse James.
Now you will have to convince him to forget.
I heard them call you the Zek.
Before starting the action, Jack and Martin monitored the situation first so that Helen's rescue mission went according to plan. Martin explained that Jack had to trap so he could see the positions of the shooters they might have set up.
And how do you propose we get him started?
I don't know the type of people you normally associate with, Reacher.
The action began. Jack, who was driving Helen's car, tried to draw fire from the criminals. Of course, this was an advantage because Martin could see the shooter's position in the dark of night. Suddenly, a very exciting shootout broke out between all of them. Jack, who saw Martin continuing to help him, then immediately rushed from the car with a knife in his hand. Luckily, there was still a rock right in front of him, and it helped protect Jack from indiscriminate gunfire. Knowing Jack was cornered, Martin fired several shots. which gave Jack Reacre the opportunity to attack them back. Thanks to Martin's help, Jack was able to finish them off one by one. And now only Charlie is left. Here Jack doesn't finish off Charlie, but he chooses to fight with his bare hands. With his abilities as a former military policeman, Jack Reacre is clearly superior to Charlie. Jack Reacre mercilessly beats Charlie by breaking both his arms and legs, then ending by stepping on his head, which killed Charlie instantly. Emerson, who was holding Helen hostage, began to panic. He aimed his gun and prepared to shoot Jack Reacre. With a sharp shot, Jack managed to finish off Emerson. Now only Zek remains, the person in this conspiracy. Here Zek feels innocent and instead threatens to throw Jack in prison because he had finished off his men. Hearing this, Jack Reacre was very angry and shot Zek in the head. Helen then met James Barr, who had woken up from his coma. But he experienced a slight loss of memory about the last incident he experienced. After that, Helen showed photos of the crime scene and how James would shoot the target.
And how do you think you would have done it?
James explained that he would use a car to shoot targets from a bridge with his back to the sun. Helen was surprised because James Barr's explanation was exactly the same as Jack Reacre's analysis. Helen also said that she would defend him. So James will be cleared of all charges. James Barr also answered that there was only someone who could protect him, namely Jack Reacre. And the movie is over. Thank you for watching. Look forward to the next video.